So do you set goals at the beginning of every single year, but somehow end up in the exact same place at the end of the year? Maybe you and the team hit the goals, but it was an exhausting and grueling year just to achieve them. Or maybe you didn't hit the goals at all and you're feeling defeated because you didn't hit what you wanted to achieve. Well, if that sounds familiar, you are not alone. I've worked with hundreds of managers who feel exactly the same way. And here's what I've learned. The reason why you're living Groundhog Day every end of the year is because there is this massive gap in the way that you're setting your goals. And that gap is exactly why every year feels like a repeat. So to prevent that feeling next year, I'm going to show you 3 really important things. First, why you end up in the exact same place year after year, even when you're working hard and setting clear goals. Second, how to create goals that actually drive different outcomes instead of just rolling over the same priorities with slightly different numbers. And third, how to communicate these goals in a way that doesn't overwhelm and instead energizes your team. So first, let me set the stage here of how I imagine goal setting goes for you year after year. And you'll have to let me know in the comment section below if I'm on track or off track. Okay, so maybe it's planning season in your company and your senior leaders have just sent over next year's priorities, right? Maybe they send it to you in a slide deck or an email or a meeting, and you kind of sit there and think to yourself a couple things like, okay, number 1, these are some pretty ambitious goals. But number 2, like, do we even have the bandwidth to pull this off? And how am I going to communicate this to my team in a way that doesn't make them want to quit? And so after you've collected yourself based on those thoughts, you get to work and you start to really try to translate those priorities into tangible goals for your team. You share it in your project management tool so that everyone knows what to do and when, and then everyone gets back to work on doing the things that they were already doing. And just like that, planning season is done. Does that sound about right? Well, it did for me. For years, that's how I crafted goals. And honestly, listening to other managers, it sounds pretty much the same. Now, while this process is not wrong in itself, it is still missing a vital piece, which is making the goal incomplete and guaranteeing that you will end up overwhelmed and potentially not hitting your goals at the end of the year. So what's this critical piece or component? Well, what you're missing is the obstacles. Think about it. So let's say you're a client experience team and leadership has just given you a very clear target, right? Let's say they've told you, y'all have to increase client satisfaction to 4.5 stars, and you communicate that to your team that, hey, this is what we got to do by the end of the year. Well, on paper, that looks good, right? Because it's clear, measurable, and aligned. But what the goal doesn't address is the very real issues that keep you from being able to achieve that goal. For example, nowhere in that goal are we actually addressing what might be holding people back from being able to achieve those goals, thus making it really hard to actually attain. And what makes things even worse and more overwhelming for a lot of teams when we don't actually address the obstacles is that team members often compensate for the missing piece by working harder or putting in more hours or just trying to push through any unspoken barriers just to hit your goals. And so the cycle repeats, right? You set goals based off of what leadership wants. Your team works really hard to compensate for the obstacles that you didn't address. And then at the end of the year, you're right back where you started, right? Exhausted and frustrated. All because of the fact that we didn't account for what's actually standing in the way. So that, my friend, is why you end up in the same place year after year. It's not because you're not working hard enough. It's not because your team is incapable, but it's because your goals are incomplete, right? You're setting the what without really discussing the obstacles that are blocking progress. But here's the good news. You don't have to do more work because you already have all the information you need to identify what those obstacles are because you would have just wrapped up your annual performance reviews. And if you did it right, you would have had a lot of great conversations with your team, not just about their performance and their growth areas, but also about their challenges, which means they would have told you things that reveal exactly what is standing in their way, right? Maybe they talked to you about manual processes or skill gaps or resource constraints or communication breakdowns, right? Your team already gave you the roadmap. You just need to connect what they told you to the goals that you're setting for next year. And that, my friend, is your bridge. So once you made that connection between what your team told you and what needs to change, the next question is like, How do you actually turn those insights into goals? Well, let me show you the process, and we'll go back to the example that I mentioned earlier where leadership maybe gave you a goal to improve customer satisfaction to, let's say, 4.5 stars by the end of the next year. So with that goal in mind, what you want to do is go back through all your annual reviews with your team and start just jotting down all the roadblocks, right, that got in the way of them being able to work collectively or accomplish last year's goals and do their very best work. Then ask yourself, are any of these obstacles a potential barrier to them hitting next year's goals? If there are, circle them, right? If you have a clear winner, great. If you have several, then you got to ask yourself another filtering question, which is, well, which one of these obstacles, if removed, would make the biggest difference in our ability to hit next year's goals? So let's say you've determined that there's manual processes, training gaps, communication problems, but that the primary issue is manual processes, then what you want to do is turn that obstacle into a complementary goal, right? And you might say, hey, we're going to work on automating all our processes by the end of Q1 so that we can free up some of everyone's time to ensure we're making traction on the actual company priority to improve CSAT scores. Here's where you might stumble when it comes to creating these goals, or should I say communicating with your team about these goals, because I have mentioned this to managers in the past and they go about doing it and then they have like 10 obstacle goals and they're trying to communicate it with their team and now their team feels overwhelmed, right? They tend to feel like, great, you're just giving us all these goals and absolutely no time and resources to do it, and then they kind of feel unsupported. Obviously, we don't want them to feel that way, which is why there is a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this. So the wrong way sounds like this, right? All right, team, we have this list of goals to do. The company wants us to do this, and we're going to do these things on the side here as well, right? That just sounds like a lot of even competing goals that can make somebody feel like you're just adding more work to their plate. So my recommendation is that you frame the obstacle goal as a complementary goal that enables you to break free of the cycle of never like achieving the goals and actually making traction. So here's what that could sound like. You could say, all right, team, leadership wants us to hit this customer satisfaction goal by the end of next year. And I know that feels pretty big given all the challenges that, you've been going through and what you've shared with me. I know that you've shared with me like collectively in different ways that you're really challenged by the amount of manual work that we have to do. I want you to know I've heard you. And so here's what we're going to do, right? And then you insert like your list of goals. And then you can kind of wrap up by letting them know, hey, I just want to be clear that this isn't about adding more to your plate, right? This is about removing what's been making your job harder so that we can actually hit the goals and accomplish what we want to do, right? Do you see the difference? We presented the obstacle goal or goals as the support that makes the real work possible. And when your team hears that, when they see that you heard what they had to say in their reviews and that you're addressing it, they don't feel so overwhelmed, right? Instead, they feel supported. They feel energized by the fact that their manager cares, right? Cares more about what's beneath the surface as opposed to what's shiny and what leadership wants. We can care about both, right? We can care about what leadership wants while at the same time recognizing that we need to support our people. And if our people are saying that something is wrong and they have been complaining about things, we got to listen to that and make sure we're addressing that. Because generally speaking, if we address those things, it really frees up people to like run with the ball and do the things that they need to. And that, my friend, is really what breaks the cycle, right? That's what makes every single year feel different, where we're addressing things as we go. Now, here's the thing, right? This entire process assumes that you're asking the right questions in your annual reviews to surface these obstacles in the first place. Because if you're not running effective reviews that dig into the challenges and roadblocks, then you're not going to have the insights you need to identify those obstacle goals. So if you haven't done your annual review yet, or if you want to make sure that you're setting them up in a way that gives you the information you need, then I want you to watch this video here next, where I walk you through my exact process for preparing and running an effective performance review that actually gives you what you need so that you can lead your team forward.